Fireworks didn't just light the sky. They shook the ground, the windows, and the expectations of every American watching in disbelief. The moment the clock crept toward midnight in the Philippines, phones across the United States started buzzing with live streams that felt unreal. Streets glowing like daylight, laughter echoing louder than the explosions, families pouring outside as if the whole nation had agreed on one thing: this night mattered. For Americans used to count down balls and quiet champagne toasts, what they saw felt more like a festival than a holiday. The energy wasn't polished or restrained. It was raw, joyful, and proudly loud. This wasn't chaos. It was tradition, layered with meaning, memory, and hope. As the final seconds of the year slipped away, millions of Filipinos weren't just welcoming January 1st. They were chasing luck, honoring family, and celebrating survival. And for Americans watching from afar, the shock wasn't just the noise, it was the heart behind it. Across American living rooms, reactions ranged from laughter to stunned silence. "Is this normal?" became the most common comment under viral videos. In the Philippines, New Year's Eve isn't a background event, it's a full-bodied experience that pulls everyone in. Entire neighborhoods come alive, from toddlers clutching coins to grandparents banging pots with proud smiles. The belief is simple but powerful: noise scares away bad luck and invites prosperity. To Americans, raised on quieter resolutions and reflective moments, this felt like the opposite approach. Yet the more they watched, the more curiosity replaced confusion. Why were people wearing polka dots? Why were tables overflowing with round fruits? Why did joy seem so collective? What looked overwhelming at first slowly revealed a deep cultural logic, one where optimism is practiced loudly, not whispered quietly. The shock deepened when Americans realized this wasn't a staged celebration for tourists or social media. This was authentic, repeated year after year, passed down through generations. Filipino families prepare for weeks, saving money not just for food but for shared experience. In many homes, the night starts early, with cooking that feels like a ritual itself. Kitchens turn into storytelling spaces where elders explain why grapes matter or why jumping at midnight could mean growing taller or richer. Americans watching these moments felt something unexpected: nostalgia for traditions they didn't grow up with. The Philippines wasn't just celebrating a new year, it was reinforcing identity. That realization hit harder than any firecracker. Midnight in the Philippines arrives like a tidal wave. The final 10 seconds trigger an eruption of sound: fireworks, horns, shouts, laughter, prayers. For Americans used to controlled displays and city permits, the scale felt unbelievable. Yet beneath the spectacle was something deeply human. Families hugged, neighbors toasted, strangers smiled at each other in the street. The celebration blurred social lines. Wealth didn't matter. Location didn't matter. Everyone owned the moment together. American viewers began comparing it to their own experiences: isolated countdowns, small gatherings, or watching from screens. The contrast wasn't meant to shame, it simply highlighted how differently cultures express hope. What truly fascinated Americans was the symbolism woven into every detail. Round objects everywhere represented coins and abundance. Polka dot clothing wasn't a fashion trend, it was an invitation to wealth. Even the food told a story. Long noodles symbolized long life. Sticky rice desserts represented family unity. To Americans, accustomed to resolutions written on paper, this physical expression of hope felt refreshing. Instead of promising to change themselves, Filipinos surrounded themselves with reminders of what they wanted to attract. Watching this, many Americans admitted feeling inspired rather than overwhelmed. The streets themselves became characters in the story. Children ran with sparklers, their laughter cutting through the smoke. Teenagers recorded videos, shouting greetings in Taglish. Parents stood watchful but relaxed, trusting the collective joy of the crowd. For Americans used to strict safety zones, this openness felt risky, but also liberating. It showed a level of communal trust rarely seen in modern cities. The Philippines wasn't ignoring danger, it was choosing joy despite uncertainty. That mindset resonated deeply with viewers who had lived through years of global stress. Social media amplified the shock. TikTok clips of Manila, Cebu, and small provinces exploded with comments from Americans asking the same question: why does this look so alive? The answer wasn't just fireworks, it was participation. New Year's Eve in the Philippines isn't something you watch, it's something you do. Americans began to realize how passive many of their own traditions had become. This wasn't about copying another culture. It was about remembering how celebration could feel when everyone contributes. Many Americans were surprised by how spiritual the night felt. Amid the noise, there were quiet prayers, moments of gratitude, and wishes whispered into the chaos. Faith blended seamlessly with festivity. Churches rang bells while families thanked God for surviving another year. This balance of loud joy and quiet reverence challenged the American idea that celebration and reflection must be separate. In the Philippines, they coexist naturally. The shock also came from seeing resilience on full display. The Philippines faces typhoons, economic struggles, and global challenges, yet New Year's Eve looked fearless. Americans watching couldn't ignore the contrast. The celebration wasn't denial, it was defiance. It said, "We're still here and we're hopeful." That message landed powerfully with viewers who had grown tired of muted optimism. Food videos became another source of amazement. Tables bent under the weight of dishes meant to be shared, not shown off. Americans noticed how food wasn't plated individually but spread out communally. This wasn't about indulgence alone, it was about abundance meant for everyone. The idea that prosperity should be visible and shared felt radical to viewers raised on moderation and restraint. Fireworks culture alone stunned American audiences. Homemade displays, neighborhood-level celebrations, and non-stop explosions felt intense. But Filipinos explained that it wasn't recklessness, it was tradition mixed with responsibility. Communities look out for each other. Elders guide the young. The chaos had structure, even if it didn't look like it at first glance. As the night stretched into early morning, Americans noticed something else. The celebration didn't rush. There was no hurry to clean up or move on. Conversations flowed. Music played. Time slowed. This unhurried joy contrasted sharply with American schedules, where even celebrations feel timed. The Philippines reminded viewers that some moments deserve to linger. For Filipino Americans watching from the US, the shock was emotional. Many felt homesick, proud, and seen all at once. Comments filled with stories of childhood memories, grandparents, and traditions left behind. Americans reading these comments began to understand that New Year's Eve in the Philippines wasn't just a party, it was a cultural anchor. The shock evolved into admiration when Americans realized how inclusive the celebration was. No invitations needed. No tickets required. The street was the venue, and everyone belonged. This openness challenged the American habit of privatizing joy. In the Philippines, happiness spills outward. Music played a huge role, surprising Americans who expected organized concerts. Instead, there were karaoke machines, speakers blasting pop and ballads, voices imperfect but enthusiastic. The message was clear: participation mattered more than performance. Children stayed up late, another detail that shocked American parents. But in Filipino culture, this night is formative. Kids learn traditions not through lectures but through experience. Americans watching began questioning how many of their own traditions truly involved the next generation. The idea of welcoming luck actively fascinated viewers. Jumping at midnight, opening doors and windows, keeping lights on, these rituals felt playful yet intentional. Americans realized how fun belief could be when it's shared. Even the cleanup became a moment of togetherness. Neighbors helped neighbors. Laughter continued amid smoke and confetti. The night didn't end at midnight, it transformed. American reactions shifted from, "This is crazy," to, "This is beautiful." The shock softened into respect. Viewers began asking what they could learn rather than what felt strange. Travel searches spiked. Americans joked about booking flights just to experience it firsthand. The Philippines had unknowingly become a New Year's Eve dream destination. More importantly, Americans started rethinking celebration itself. Did joy have to be quiet to be meaningful? Did reflection require silence? The Philippines offered a different answer. The documentary moments that resonated most weren't the fireworks but the faces, smiling, hopeful, alive. That's what stayed with viewers long after the noise faded. Cultural shock turned into cultural exchange. Americans shared their own traditions in comment sections, creating conversations instead of comparisons. The Philippines didn't just shock America, it invited it into a different way of welcoming time. As dawn arrived, the streets calmed, but the feeling lingered. Americans noticed how the joy didn't look exhausted, it looked fulfilled. This wasn't excess for the sake of excess. It was expression, collective and unapologetic. Americans realized that what shocked them most wasn't the noise, it was the unity. In a world growing more divided, the Philippines showed how celebration can still be communal. New Year's Eve became more than a date on the calendar, it became a reminder of shared humanity. By the time the last spark faded, Americans weren't just shocked, they were inspired. The Philippines didn't just welcome a new year, it showed the world how hope can sound when it's shouted together.